gives. And I want to take you to one of them, which is the fifth illustration. There's one to come, which begins in verse 43. But this fifth illustration, which is an illustration of righteousness, as he sets it up, and I'll walk you through that a little bit. But verse 38 is where we're going to begin in the reading. I also want to tell you that we are not Bible students. Now, I know that sounds strange because in the Evangelical church there is a push for Bible study. And hey, we're for Bible study in a sense. But Bible study can just be Bible study. You know, it can be informational. It can be biblical trivia. It can be stuff. It can be a missionary journey of Paul. It can be things. It can be events. And we're not Bible students. We are conceptual students, which means we are after the concept. See, that's what you got in the mystery. It wasn't just a Bible study about mystery. It was giving you the concept that Paul had concerning this mystery idea. That's conceptual, see? You're going away with the concept. Do you see that? The concept is what we're after. And when you come to the Sermon on the Mount, of course, the concept, wow, is more than just memorizing Beatitudes or just seeing illustrations. What is the concept that he's trying to give to us? That's what we're really after. And in verse 38 he says, Matthew chapter 5, verse 38, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you not to resist an evil person. But whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. If anyone wants to sue you and take away your tunic, let him have your cloak also. And whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him who asks you, and from him who wants to borrow from you, do not turn away." If you look at the Sermon on the Mount, chapter 5, 6, and 7, and you go to the end of the Sermon on the Mount, you get the reaction of the crowd. The end of the Sermon on the Mount is given to you in chapter 7, verse 28. And in verse 28 he says, as Jesus ended these sayings, so as the Sermon on the Mount ended, he describes the reaction of the people, that the people were astonished at his teaching. And the word astonished is the idea of, comes from the Greek word expresso, which is the idea of literally knocked out of your senses. It is that there is such a powerful statement being made that is so radical, so off the wall, so overwhelming, so beyond comprehension that it literally fries my brain to think about it. And they were literally, their mouth was wide open, their eyes were bugged out, their chin was on their chest, they're going, whoa, we have never heard anything like this in our lives. What was it that was so astounding and so off the wall and so overboard that they had never heard? Well, in the system of all religions, and not just religions, but in the system of all world structure, down at your job, over at the school, in the school system, everywhere you go, there's this system that's set up. And again, it's in all world religions. See, here's where I want to go. Well, what's that for you? I don't know. It could be heaven. It could be purity. It could be godliness. It could be whatever. It could be Dallas Cowboys. It could be whatever you want it to be. You know, here's where it could be success in business. It could be the manager. It could be own the business. It's whatever this is for you. Wealth, whatever this is for you. Well, here's where I am. Well, how am I going to get here if I'm here? Well, there's only one way to get there, and that's, come on, work on it. Get the program down. Come on, discipline yourself. Come on, get with the program. Come on, come to Sunday school on time. Good night, pray more. Read the Bible. What's wrong with you? Get your act together. Stop that. I see you sleeping in church. What is the deal here? See, that's where we live. See, the boss says, I want you here. Well, you're here. Hey, if you can't, I'll find somebody who can. And you get your act together and come to job on time and work harder and do the production, or hey, Now, we love that system. I love that system because by the time you reach my age, I'm not here, I'm right here. Which means I have this great possibility of looking down on some who aren't there. And this sets up a judgmental system, you see that? Where, hey, everybody who isn't where I am, well. And we express that all the time. Well, I'm not the best person in the world, but hey, I'm not the worst. I was telling my congregation about, it came back to my memory, my dad was a preacher, and we were in this small town, pastoring in this small town, and we had a town drunk. And of course, everybody knew the town drunk, and we were out walking one day, and my dad got to talking at the home, to the town drunk at his home, and was talking to him about Jesus and coming to church, and finally, and he was drunk then, but as I remember it, but I was just a kid. And finally, we were walking down the sidewalk, leaving the town drunk, and he came after us and was saying, "Preacher, you're right. Preacher, you're right. I shouldn't swear so much. And preacher, you're right. Hey, I shouldn't hit my wife. I know that. Preacher, I know I ought to come to church. But preacher, I just want to tell you, I don't eat meat on Friday." See, you can always find somebody. See, that's the system. Now, Jesus came along and said, well, hey, here's where you want to go. I want to give you some news. And in the Beatitudes, which is the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, he whacks you on the back and starts with blessed. Now, blessed is a congratulations term. It's a congratulations, you've arrived. Congratulations, you're there. So what was so astounding out of the very first words of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, he is whacking them on the back saying, whoa, what everybody else makes you earn, I'm going to give to you. My Lord. Congratulations, you're already there. Hey, you're in. Woo! Hey, you've got it. Oh, this is phenomenal. You've arrived. It's yours. That is impossible. That's eyes bugged out, mouth wide open, chin on the chest. Whoa, what are you talking about? How can that be? Now, you realize he's talking to the multitudes. If you look at verse 1, chapter 5, he's definitely talking to the multitudes. They were there, but more specifically, he's talking to disciples. And it says, and when he was seated, his disciples came to him, and he opened his mouth and taught them. So it was a disciple thing, and you realize this was early in his ministry as well. So what's going on here is he's taking his disciples aside and saying, listen, I want to let you know what you're getting yourself into. You need to know what you're getting yourself into. That we're moving into a whole new deal. Now, what you've been into, Old Testament, Old Covenant, has been fine, but folks, we're stepping up. And it is radical, a radical step up. It is so radical that it is a mystery. See, it's hard to get away from that. It's really hard to get away from that concept. See, it's radical because we're stepping up. And it's going to be altogether different in its shape, in its feel, in what you're all about. And he says, let me present to you the premise. Now, we hardly ever preach about the Sermon on the Mount without going over this premise. So we're just going over the premise again and again and again and again, because if you do not get the premise, you miss the whole thing. The premise, everything, you'll misinterpret the Sermon on the Mount. It will become a bunch of rules. It'll be, hey, new rules for life, or it'll become some kind of impossible idealistic thing that you're trying to achieve. So you got to stick with the premise. And the premise is given to us in verse 3 down through verse 12, which of course is the Beatitudes. And we're calling that section the formation of the kingdom. Because he's literally coming to them and saying, I want to talk to you about the kingdom. Now you'll note he begins the Sermon on the Mount in verse 3 with the kingdom idea. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom. Now he doesn't mention the kingdom again until the last beatitude, which is verse 10. And in verse 10 he says, blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom. So this becomes the bookends, the beginning and the end, the first beatitude, the second beatitude, which is a presentation of the kingdom. Now, the kingdom is not a location to go to. The kingdom is a relationship. It's relationalship in its dynamic. See, it's not territory where you live. It's the kingdom, Jesus said, is within you, which is some kind of a deal that's happening. See, we're moving from sacrifices. We're moving from ceremonies. We're moving from lighting candles. We're moving from counting beads. We're moving from incense. We're moving from this realm to, whoa. We're moving from here to here, and something new. This whole thing is stepping up, guys. We're moving into a new realm. Are you willing to go there? Now, if you're going to go there with me, he says, you've got to get this premise of what the kingdom is made up of. Now, first of all, the kingdom, he says, is made up in verse 3 of the poor in spirit. Not poor in finances, but poor in spirit. Not poor in materialism, but poor in spirit. And the word poor there is the strongest Greek word we have for poverty-stricken. It's absolutely no resource at all. So what he's saying is, if I take a knife and slice you down the middle, and I go to the inner core of your existence, you know what I find there? Absolutely nothing. You are absolutely helpless. Now, that runs cross-grain to everything. See, we don't buy that. Well, I can't do everything, but hey, I'm good at some things. You know, I'm not a good plumber, but I am a good electrician. And I pride myself on some things. Jesus says, when I slice you down the middle and I go to the core of your life, what makes you tick, what really drives you, where it all comes from, where everything, attitude and structure of life and how you handle yourself and how you view things, you are absolutely, totally helpless there. Incredible. And you're not that way because you've sinned, although you have sinned. But you've sinned because you're that way. See, sinning didn't make you that way. You were that way. And then you operated out of your helplessness and you found yourself in sin. So here you are, helpless, and the reason you're that way is because he made you that way. He made you that way. He created you to be helpless. You were born to be a loser. No, I'm not a loser. No, I'm, well, see how that grinds us? Why would he want me to be helpless? Why would he create me helpless? Oh, that's the next verse. How am I to handle the helplessness? Blessed are those who mourn. You are to handle helplessness. See, they build on each other. Blessed are those who mourn. The mourning idea is the strongest idea of grief. It's the idea of grief just overtakes you. You just sit and blubber. You just got a hole. You just live in emptiness. You're just overwhelmed. You can't control yourself. He said, would you let your helplessness do that to you? Would you just live in it? Would you just set up the boundaries and live in your helplessness all the time? Would you constantly be aware of it? Would you never step out of your helplessness? Would you always be aware of your helplessness? Would you never, ever, ever cease to be helpless? Don't ever get cocky. Don't ever act like, well, I can handle it. No, you can't. Would you just live in the boundaries of your helplessness? Would you embrace your helplessness night and day? Go to bed, get up, all in your helplessness. Everything you do, all the way you treat your family, everything that's going on, you live in the helplessness of your life. See, nobody's proposing that you become God. See, nobody is even proposing that you get better and better and better. See, what the Bible's proposing is that we embrace more and more and more, that we surrender more and more and more, that we yield more and more and more. And in the embrace of my helplessness, what happens? Oh, you will be comforted. You know what the word for comfort is? Paraclete. It's the Holy Spirit. Oh, he's going to come. He's going to come in the immensity of his presence, and he's going to literally merge, embrace, infiltrate the very core of your existence. And when you in your helplessness and he in his greatness, you in your nature and him in his nature, you in your helplessness and him in his resource, when those two things meet and come together, you know what happens? A new creature is created that's never been before. This is the kingdom person. This is not, I'm trying to be. This is, I am. This is not, I can't be this on my own. He can't be this on his own. But together we become. That's his premise. Now this is the new level. This is the new level. See, old covenant was, hey, I'm doing the best I can. Here's the rules. Well, I'm trying to keep them. Well, I'm working real hard at this. Well, I wish God wouldn't look so close. But see, the kingdom thing is an altogether different ballgame. We're moving to a whole new level of living it. In fact, you can't even compare the two. This is not these rules, now new rules. See, it's not that. It's not these ceremonies and new ceremonies. Not that. We had this going on. Now we've got intimacy and oneness, and it isn't just, well, I was there at the base of Mount Sinai when God thundered and scared us half to death, so I've known something of the presence of God, but that's not this. This is, whoa, I'm enveloped. This is, oh, I'm immersed. This is, oh, I'm saturated. This is the literal presence and person of God himself has literally invaded my flesh, and I'm just full of him. I mean, I'm just, whoa, I've got his mind now. I'm thinking like he thinks. I've got his emotions. I'm feeling like he feels. Oh, I've got his heart. I care about what he cares about. Somehow, some way, I've become intimate with him. I've become, whoa. That's a new level. Now, how would that function on the street? On the street in verse 13 down through verse 16, he says, it would function like light and salt, which is imagery language. So what he's saying in the light and the salt thing is that, hey, it's being language. Because you can't do salt. You either are or you aren't. You don't do light. See, you don't come and learn, okay, if I do 5 things, 12 steps to being light. See, no, there aren't 12 steps. You either are or you aren't. See, it's being language. Now, you understand, it isn't that we don't participate in this. I got that, because in verse 16, you'll note he says, let your light so shine before men that you may see your good works. Oh, there is activity involved. Yeah, you're not lazy. You're not leaned back. You're not, well, let God do it all. Well, I'm helpless, and so he can take over and just do what he wants to do. You see, it isn't that exactly. It's not that I'm not involved. I am involved. See, we just struggled how to communicate this. And, of course, the old illustration of the glove that is lifeless, helpless, just lays there, good for nothing, does nothing. Well, not exactly, because the hand comes and literally jams inside the glove, and suddenly the glove is doing everything. Well, no, the glove doesn't do anything. Well, the glove is involved in everything. The glove isn't idle. The glove is active. The glove is moving. Nothing takes place that the glove isn't involved in, and yet the glove doesn't do anything. Which is, how do you... See, that's this. Which is a fun... Wouldn't it be something if that's your destiny? Do you realize that would take... See, the glove is never stressed out. Can you imagine the glove saying, oh, I'm sorry, God. I've got an anxiety attack. And I'm not, hey, come on, we all struggle. Come on. I'm not criticizing. I'm saying, whoa, do you see the new level of this thing? Where this thing goes and what he's trying to propose to us. Now, when he looked at his crowd, of course, they looked about like you. They look like, wow, what? So they thought in their mind that what Jesus was doing was starting a new deal, which in a sense he was. But they thought, well, listen, all we've known is the scriptures, Old Testament, and the oral traditions of the scriptures given by the Pharisees. And Jesus came along and broke all these oral traditions, just broke them, made fun of them, just, healed withered hands on the Sabbath day, and just had his disciples picking and eating grain on the Sabbath day. And that's why they crucified him, because he just made fun of all of their precious little oral traditions, their rules, that were all based on the scripture, they said. So if Jesus got us to a new level, and he's breaking all these oral traditions, what would your conclusion be? Well, then the scriptures, he's doing away with that. So the scriptures is gone, and he's doing a whole new deal. So dump the Old Testament and all the Jewish stuff that we've been in and all the tradition of the Old Testament. Just dump all that. Why? Because Jesus is doing a new deal. And he comes along in verse 17 then and says, whoa, do not think I came to destroy the law or the prophets, the scriptures. No. In fact, he says it twice, you'll note in that verse. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. So he says, what I want to do is take you back past all that you've known at this point in the oral traditions, and I want to take you over the top of that and bring you back to the scriptures and show you what the scriptures really means. And then he comes to this thundering verse, which sets the stage for all of this, which is verse 20. For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Now this is not, well, after you have matured, you will. No, this is you will not even enter. This is entering. This is entrance level. Entrance stuff. What I'm talking to you about, he says. It's not down the road. It's not after you have developed. It's entrance level. And he says the entrance level of this new merger of God and man, this new kingdom person, this new level of living is going to be a righteousness that exceeds. Now in their minds, you understand, they couldn't imagine a righteousness more than the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees. I mean, how can you be in church more than every time the church doors are open? I mean, how can you tithe more than tithe? You tithe. I mean, right. You can give offerings, but you can't tithe more than tithe. See, how are you going to go beyond? See, how's there going to be a righteousness? Well, it's going to be a righteousness that's on a whole new level. Now, he says, I know you didn't get that. So I want to give you illustrations. Now, if your heart is stuck on righteousness, if you really want the righteousness of the kingdom, if you're really after being right, if that's your heart's cry, oh, I want to be right, then okay, bite into this, because I want to lay it out for you. And he begins to illustrate. Now, I've looked carefully at these illustrations. There's 6 of them, and I've tried desperately to find one area in my life that doesn't fit into one of these illustrations. Because if I could find one area, then I could do what I want to in that area. But this covers it, folks. This thing is covered. These 6 illustrations cover it. Now he starts with the murder thing in verse 21. And every one of them is a contrast, you understand. Over here you've got the contrast of what was the old system that I've been talking to you about, and here's the new level we're going to. So this is the old righteousness, here's the new righteousness. So what is the old righteousness? You have heard that the old righteousness said of those of old, you shall not murder. And you understand that. Hey, I got a temper, I know. Hey, I get mad sometimes, I know. Everybody gets upset, I know. Hey, I popped out of my mother's womb and some dude slapped me and I've been mad ever since. I know. I got this temper and I got all these feelings inside. What am I supposed to do with all that? Well, you just can't let it run wild. Good night. Get a hold of yourself. Go to anger management class forevermore. Get a grip, brother. Get a grip. Well, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to put boundaries around my temper, boundaries around my hate, boundaries around my bitterness, boundaries around it. Well, what's the boundary? Across the line across which I will not go. Well, I'm not going to kill you. Wow. I don't know what else to do. I hate your guts, but I'm not going to kill you. You ought to be glad for that. Mercy. I'm not going to kill you. Hey, I'll badmouth you, but I'm not going to kill you. I'll slander you, but I'm not going to kill you. I'll make it so hot for you down at the church that you go to another one, but hey, I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to kill you. No, I'm not going to kill you. It's the best it's the best I can do. Because there's people, hey, not everybody, but there are people. Not everybody, but there are people. You could be one of them. There are people that I can't stand. What am I supposed to do with it? Jesus said, let me take you to, now I want to be right. Righteousness. Well, what kind of righteousness is in the kingdom person? Jesus says, I say to you that whoever is angry, don't be angry. What? That's impossible. I know. I get angry just thinking about not being angry. I know. I've been in anger management class 5 times and got mad every time and left. I know. I can't. Well, you've proved his point. You're helpless, aren't you? See, you can't pull that off. So live in your helplessness. And what would happen if he would come in his nature and who he is and enter into a merger with you, an infusion, a saturation, an infiltration, an enveloping of your life and his life until you begin to feel like he feels. Can you imagine Jesus dying on a cross saying, I hate your guts? But, see, I'm not going to be right, folks. Well, I'm trying to control my hatred, and I don't say anything bad about him anymore, and I learned to count to 10. He says, you're still over here. What I want is here. Well, again, that's impossible. Nobody. Which is his point. Now he moves to the second illustration, which is verse 27, which is the illustration about adultery. It's morality. So you got murder, you got morality. And, of course, there's the old. You have heard of the old. It was said of the old, you shall not commit adultery. Hey, I got this. The old-timer said, I've got this body drive. I got lots of drives. But I got this body drive. I got this sexual drive. I've got sexuality. And I don't, you got to deal with it. I know that. Hey, I prayed for God to take it away, but he never did. So I got this drive. It's just it's like chocolate. If you eat too much chocolate, your face breaks out and you get a bellyache. Can't help it. So you got to discipline your appetites. And this is one appetite among many. And I got to discipline it. So the old timer said, well, what kind of boundaries am I going to put around it? How am I going to discipline it? Well, I'm not going to cheat on my wife. Hey, I'm not going to cheat on my wife. I want to, but I'm not going to do it. Besides, she'd kill me. Anyhow, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to cheat on my wife. I tell you, I'm not going to cheat on my wife. I want to, but I'm not going to cheat on her. Lust, but I'm not going to cheat on her. Pornography, not going to cheat on her, though. Emotional affairs, not going to cheat on her. Flirtations, but not going to cheat on her. It's the best I can pull off. Tolerate the old hag. I'm stuck. See, that's this. But see, I want to be right. So what's really right? Jesus says it's not that. Well, what's really right? And he brings up the subject of the heart, We don't have time to get into all this, but verse 28, you've committed adultery with her in his heart. He brings up, it's the only illustration where he brings up the heart, which is this core thing If I slice you down the middle and go to the core of your life, what do I find? Helplessness. So at the core of your life, I find helplessness, which is surrounded with sexuality. So what am I going to do with that? What would happen if my heart's sexuality would be filled with Him and I would begin to see things which He brings up the way, the look. But I say to you, whoever looks, see, this is about looking. See, well, oh, God said you're not supposed to look at women. Oh, brother, new rule, don't look at women. How are you going to pull that off? I mean, they're everywhere. I mean, that's impossible. I know. So what am I supposed to do with this? Oh, maybe it's not about looking at women. It's about what you see when you look at them, which comes from where? The heart. And what would happen in my helplessness if He came and literally merged with me and I begin to see like He sees? I want to be right. We're talking righteousness, a righteousness that exceeds. Well, Manley, that's impossible. I know. That's ridiculously impossible. You're right. There isn't a human being. You can't know. That's off the wall. You're right. Which proves his point. You're helpless. And then he comes to marriage. In verse 31. So we got murder, morality, marriage. And he comes to the marriage thing. Now, what the old timers say? Well, how can I get rid of her? See, what's grounds? Isn't it interesting? 2,000 years ago, they were battling with what's the grounds for divorce. How can I get rid of her? I want to be right. What's the right thing to do? When can I kick her out? Here we are, 2,000 years later. How can I get rid of her? Amazing, isn't it? We haven't figured anything out, have we? See, how can I get rid of her? Jesus says, instead of asking how you can get rid of her, look at this, verse 32. But I say to you, whoever divorces his wife for any reason except such causes her. Let me ask you about what you're causing in your wife. What? Yeah, what are you causing? What are you talking about? Hey, you come home, you're all upset. Well, you've had a bad day. Well, I've worked hard all day. Well, where's my supper? Well, what did you just cause in her? She looks at you. Where'd that come from? Came from you. You caused it in her. So you said, she said. See, are you taking your wife and pulling her into godliness? Are you taking your wife and pulling her into security? Are you taking your wife and pulling her into trust? Are you taking your wife and pulling her into prayer? And is she, oh, my wife is a godly woman. You know why? She has to live with me all the time. And I just pour Jesus all over the woman. Push her in the direction of Christ. I want to be right. Okay. So you're going to have to. Then he moves to morality in terms of honesty, which is verse 33. See, the old said, well, yeah, I don't have to really tell the truth. There's some wiggle room in truth. See, there's some wiggle room. You know, you ought to keep your word, but there's some wiggle room unless God's involved. Oh, if God gets involved, strike you dead. Hey, you got to come through. So if you take an oath and God is involved, you got to be true. You got to keep your word. If God is involved, but you know, if it's just the altar, if it's just the Bible, or it's just swear by your head, or swear by the earth, or swear by whatever. Hey, there's some wiggle room. Well, yeah, God is involved, so I can get by. What if you merged? And he was in everything you said. Oh, my stars. If that was true, I'd have to always be honest. There'd never be any wiggle room. I know. Well, that's impossible. I know. Proves his point, right? Proves his point. But I want to be right. I know. I want to be right. I want a righteousness that... And then he comes to our passage. Now, see, I really got into this concept. You see the concept? The concept is I'm helpless. That's what he's presenting. I'm helpless. And in my helplessness, he's going to come and merge with me. And I'm going to become this new creature. This is not a performance thing. This is not, well, I'm going to do better. This is not, I'm going to learn some new techniques. This is not, well, I'll take some therapy. This is not, well, counseling. Well, this is not that. This is, whoa, my life is invaded by a divine person. And that divine person and I have gotten so intimate together that we have formed a new creature. Old things are passed away. All things become new. And I'm this new creature that I cannot be on my own. And, well, I have to have a part in this. Well, you do. It's your helplessness. So brag on that if you want. If you want to brag on something, brag on your helplessness. Brag on, well, I can't. Brag on, I'm not adequate. Brag on, brag on that. Brag on that, because that's your... And he comes and, oh, and in that infiltration, in that merger, see, not to touch, thank you, Bill Gaither, not he touched me, not that. It's not about that. It's not Jesus passed by. It's not visitations from God. It's not, oh, he moved on me, whoa. See, it's not that. It's, wow. That takes you to a new level of righteousness. I want to be right. And then he brought me to verse 38. Now, verse 38, this illustration ruined everything. I don't know how to tell you this. It isn't that it isn't that the concept that we just talked about isn't right. It is right. But verse 38, suddenly, you have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. What's that all about? Fairness. Come on, you got to be fair. Come on, you got to be fair. In your restitution, in your revenge, in your justice, you got to be fair. See, you got to be fair. You poke my eye out, and it's only fair that I poke your eye. Not two eyes, one eye. And if I'm going to walk around with only one eye, then you ought to only have one eye. That's fair. That's fair. I want to be fair. See, let's be fair. It's not fair for them to do this to me. See, this is not fair. Can you imagine Jesus? This isn't fair. So I marched into this whole thing about turning the other cheek and somebody suing you. Oh, brother. If anyone, now understand, it's all revolves around, but I tell you not to resist an evil person. We're talking about evil people here. This evil person is doing something to me. This evil person is suing me. In fact, he's suing me and wants to take away my tunic. You know what the tunic is for them? Underwear. See, this guy wants to strip me down to my underwear till I have nothing left. Well, this isn't fair. See, this is not fair. See, this guy wants to come and he wants me to go 1 mile. I have to do that by law. But now, going a second, no, I'm only going to do what's fair. See, this is about being fair. Everything's about being fair. I say, I want to be right. Now, suddenly in this, the whole thing shifted in concept. Suddenly, it isn't about being right. It's about being redemptive. What if you didn't care about being right? Well, I want to be righteous. What if it wasn't about righteousness? What if his kind of righteousness, what if what he's dealing with in righteousness isn't about being right? What if it's about righteousness that is always redemptive? What if righteousness can't be righteousness without being redemptive? What if the heart and soul of all the holiness and righteousness of God is always redemptive? And if it isn't redemptive, then it's not the heart of God. It's not holiness. Now you get that in this passage. See, the old timer said, well, hey, you got to be fair. Jesus said, now somebody comes along and slaps you on the right cheek. Now he didn't really slap you. This is not about a guy doubling up his fist. There's another word for that. But a guy doubling up his fist and socking you in the mouth and breaking your teeth. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about insults. And we'll probably talk about that tomorrow morning. But he's talking insults here. So a guy insults you. Well, he had no right to say that about me. That's true. He shouldn't have said that about you. He just badmouthed me. I know. Shouldn't have done that. I know. Wasn't right. I know. But see, this is not about being right. This is about, will you take the insult? Will you embrace it? And in embracing the insult, embrace him and go the extra distance to set up a relationship over the top of insult. Now it gets clearer as you march into, if anyone wants to sue you, well, hey, he wants to strip me down. What am I supposed to do? Wouldn't it be interesting if he drags you down to the court, you would use that entire time to develop relationship with him, pour your life out for him, and be redemptive. Wouldn't it be interesting if God allowed him to sue you so that you could get in such intimate contact with you that he could sense Jesus out of your life? And that God instigated this whole scene of the suing in order so that you could infiltrate his life with the wonder of Jesus. And he could see Jesus in you that he's never seen before. And it would never have happened if he hadn't sued you. Well, that's ridiculous, I know. And hey, I'm a busy man, and I got a busy schedule, and I'm on my way doing certain things. And this was a Persian thing, but this guy by Roman Persian law comes and stomps into my life and says, I want your donkey, and I want your back, and you're going to take my packages, and you're going to carry my mile, but I got my schedule. This is not fair. But what if God is setting up a situation in which you get to walk with this guy for one entire mile? And then you go the second mile. And you just talk to him about Jesus all the way, and you develop a relationship. He begins to see in you something he would have never seen if it hadn't been for the second mile. He wouldn't have seen it in the first mile. But in the second mile, he began to see. And that the whole thing was instigated by God to be redemptive. No! I don't want... I know. I'm busy. I got a schedule. I know. People take advantage. I know. You give them a mile, they'll take two. I know. See, I don't mind being right. But redemptive? Now the last one is worse than all of them. Give to him who asks you. Oh, brother. I'm not going to give to everybody who asks me. And from him who wants to borrow from you, do not turn away. Yeah, somebody's borrowing. Somebody wants I worked hard to buy that tractor, and this guy, my trailer, and nobody's going to drive my truck but me. I'm not loaning my truck out. I mean, that's only fair. I worked hard to get this truck. And listen, I've been around long enough. Every time I've loaned my trailer out, it's come back with the taillights broken or something's gone wrong. But what if God allowed him to come to you? What if instead of loaning your truck to him, you said, I'll take you. I'll help you. You spent time. You poured your life out. What if this is about being redemptive? Well, I want to be right. What if you can only be right when you're redemptive? I don't know what to say, Jesus. I've been so busy being right, doing the right things down at the church, preaching the right message, bless God, dedicating my life to ministry. And this thing has gotten so muddled, Lord, in terms of our society and being caretakers and are you catering? Are you helping them in their... And when are you being right? And when are you helping? And when are you not helping? And how am I going to sort all? How am I going to? I don't. And if this was just a bunch of rules, okay, we got this area of insulting, and then when somebody insults me, I'm to take it on the chin, and when somebody wants to sue me, and when somebody wants me to go the second mile, when a mile, I go with him a second, and when somebody wants to borrow, so I got 4 areas, I can muster that up and get that done. But God, this spills out into so many other areas that aren't in the list. How am I going to get... You're not giving me a bunch of new rules, are you? You're giving me a heart and a soul, a concept, a reality of how you think. Could you take me into my world, oh God? And could you get me beyond, well, I'm right, I've got to be right, I want to be right. Could you take me beyond doing the right thing into, oh, I want to do the Jesus thing. I want to have the Jesus heart. I want to feel like you feel. Could I merge with you until you begin to give me how you feel and what you think? And because I know what's going to happen, God. They'll nail me to a cross and I'll scream out, this isn't fair. They'll stone me to death, God, and I'll pick up stones and throw them back instead of seeing you standing at the right hand. So I can't pull this off. It's impossible. So, would you merge with me? Oh, God, give me your heart. Give me your mind. Hear my cry tonight. Let me think like you think, God. All the stupid reasoning of my world, all the wisdom of my education, all the stuff all the traditions, the oral traditions that have been jammed into my brain, all my cultural stuff. I want your culture, not mine. Heads are bowed. Are you open to this? And do you realize the absolute impossibility of this? So this is, come on, this is not a motivational speech to motivate you to do better. I'm trying to tell you to quit. Would you throw in the towel? Would you say, I can't pull this off? I can do acceptable churchy things, but I can't really enter into the vitality of Christianity. I can do religious stuff, but I can't enter into intimacy with God, the mystery. Would you abandon yourself? Would you come out of your cockiness? Would you come out of your... I believe, Jesus, this was a big deal to you. I believe you were presenting the very manifesto of the kingdom of God to your disciples and saying, guys, maybe you don't want in. Maybe you just want to go back and light some candles. Because, God, these guys fought you teeth and toenail every time you brought up the cross. Every time you brought up, I'm here to die. Every time you brought up, I'm going to bleed. Every time you brought up, hey, I'm going to wash dirty feet. Every time you brought that up. And Jesus, you just kicked us in the teeth about positions? Oh, mercy. Oh, we're so stuck on rabbi. We love the titles and we love the positions and we just love all this. And you just kicked it all in the teeth and said, what would you admit you have no value outside of Him? Oh, Jesus, how... And Lord, you've driven me to that. In the failures of everything I've ever done and everything I've ever tried to pull off. It's only in the immensity of your presence. It's only in the immersion. It's only in the merging. It's only in the merger of you and me. It's only in the oneness. It's only in the intimacy that any good thing takes place. So God, I'm asking tonight for a movement of the Spirit of God in a new and deeper way, even in this cross-style conference for tomorrow and Sunday morning and all across the land and all across the world. I'm asking for a penetration, for a deepening. We come to you to get, and could we come not to get, could we come to embrace? So here we are, Lord. Move upon us in the wonder of yourself. We give ourselves to you. And I love you, Jesus. Thank you for coming to me in the wonder of yourself.